What's up everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about Karens, crazy people, and all that kind of stuff. Hope you're all doing awesome, and as usual, we got some more Reddit posts to check out today. So feel free to share your thoughts about today's stories down in the comments, and let's get into it. That time a neighborhood kid got even on the delivery guy. This one happened a few years ago. Our mail carrier changed, and the new guy, call him Dave, was an absolute jerk, trod on flower beds, rude to people. But the real kicker was Dave would pee in a bottle, and if he was in a bad mood, that bottle would be thrown in someone's garden. If you tell him to throw the bottle in the trash, he'd throw it at you. Dave was the son of the postmaster, Bob, an older guy of the boys will be boys mindset, and best friends with the local sheriff, Steve. If you talked to Bob about his son, it'd be excuses. He's a foster kid, he's had a hard life, and on and on. If you went to Steve, then it'd be boys will be boys. Dave was in his 30s. Or Postmaster Bob is dealing with it personally. One day in the middle of summer, the neighborhood kids got to see Mailman Dave being his usual sunny self. Seems Dave was mean to them too. The kids were out playing with their water pistols, and one of them had this real high-power thing, which sent the water a good 10 feet or more. And the kid who owned it, Oren, was a great shot. It's a lovely day, 30-degree sun, and I'm out back putting out dinner. Suddenly, there's this blood-curdling scream from Dave, and the whole neighborhood comes running to see what happened. Turns out Oren had loaded his water pistol with one of Dave's pee bottles and topped it off with a can of Red Bull. So now Dave was covered in this disgusting, sticky pee and sugar mess, which was starting to stink to high heaven. One of my neighbors offered to let Dave use her shower. He ran off to another house, grabbed the hose, and turns it on himself. So now Dave is sticky, pee-soaked, and wet. He ditched everything in the street and ran off. Steve and Bob went walking the street that afternoon. We'd all not seen anything, of course. Bob had the bright idea of asking Oren, who told him exactly what we all thought of Dave and how he was acting, in the way only a bright-eyed 12-year-old can. Bob and Steve cornered Oren's dad. "Is this your son? Do you know what he did?" Without missing a beat, Oren's dad fired back. "Well, Sheriff Steve, don't you always say boys will be boys?" We never saw Dave again, but Oren's birthday party was huge that year. Voting officials tried to take my baby. I'm a mid-30s female with a baby and a preschooler. I took them with me to early vote. I am in Texas. Every poll worker is over the age of 65 when we walk in. The room was really small and everything was crammed in there, so tight you could barely walk in. I squeeze in carrying my baby and holding my preschooler's hand. The first poll worker is female and tells me that I am not allowed to have my children with me to vote. She tells me to come back when I have a babysitter. I tell her that's not the law and hand her my ID. She makes a big deal about helping out us girls, wink. There are only 2 other voters there, so I get a booth right away. I tell my preschooler to sit down at my feet and not touch anything. They do as they are told and sit down playing with a small non-electric toy we brought. I start voting. A third and different poll worker, female, starts yelling at my preschooler. "No, you can't sit there, 10 feet from the booth, please." My child and I are confused, but I start to put them in a chair next to the booths. She then comes up to me and tries to grab my baby out of my arms, and grab my preschooler by the arm, saying, "You come with me, you can see Mama when she is done voting." My 2 children start crying and clinging to me, and I have to tell her multiple times to let go of my children. Finally, another woman voting next to me asks the worker to step away, and she does. I quickly vote and enter my ballot. I ask the 4th poll worker at the door for an extra sticker so I could have 2. She tells me stickers are only for voters, not for their kids. Am I the asshole for boarding a plane without my sister and leaving her and her kids behind? I, 21 female, am currently going to college in the same town my sister, 27, and her family live in. We are about a 6-hour flight from my hometown where our parents and extended family live. We had planned on all flying back to our hometown for Thanksgiving a few days ago. For some background, my brother-in-law, who I'll call Bill, is an alcoholic. Any kind of event where alcohol is provided or purchasable ends with him getting in fights and causing issues. He yells, throws things, and gets generally aggressive. My sister arrived at the airport before me, and when I arrived at the gate an hour and a half before boarding, he was nowhere to be found. And my sister was struggling to keep track of 3 small children and all their luggage. He did not come check on them once in the entire hour and a half. I only saw him when he came staggering over to the waiting area when it was time to board. As soon as my sister started talking to him, he started to get loud and aggressive. I watched from the boarding line, different groups, as it escalated to the point where security confronted him. My sister waved me over and I got out of line. She told me that they weren't going to allow him to fly and that she needed help. I asked if I should take Bill's seat so I could sit next to one of the kids and not leave her alone on a long flight with all three. She was confused and repeated that Bill couldn't fly with us. I asked if she was going to stay behind and sort his crap out, and she said yes. I told her in that case I probably couldn't help her. Her kids are all 6 and under, 6, 3, 9 months, and would need her. My sister was still confused and then told me that she expected me to stay behind and help her deal with her husband and kids. I told her no. Traveling around the holidays is insane. There likely wouldn't be enough open seats for us to get a later flight if Bill is even still going to be allowed to fly at all. I was excited to see our family, and her kids were not my responsibility. She got upset and told me that she didn't know what to do with her husband, and if he couldn't fly, or worse, she didn't know how she'd handle it. I told her it was not my problem. Bill isn't a child that needs supervision, and it's not her job to deal with him throwing a tantrum and getting in trouble with security. That we could just board the plane and leave him to face the consequences of his own actions. She said he is her responsibility. I told her that if she knows how he is when he drinks, and that if he was her responsibility, she should have done something to prevent this, and that the situation she was in was all on her. She chose to marry an alcoholic, not me. I wouldn't be missing my family for Thanksgiving because her husband can't hold his liquor. I boarded the flight and she stayed behind. My family was happy I made it, but many of them called me insensitive for what I said, and my mom was particularly mad that I didn't stay and support my sister. Am I the asshole? Honestly, I don't get this. I don't really see how OP staying behind too would have made much of a difference in the situation. Yeah, I'm sure watching out for 3 young kids on your own is probably difficult, but if you as a parent absolutely cannot physically wrangle your 3 young kids on your own, then you got bigger problems to worry about. You can't make other people obligated and responsible against their will. And honestly, it's just a matter of them going home because they missed their flight, and maybe rebooking another one. There's probably also not much they can do about her husband being taken in by security. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. Give him a warning, fine him, get police involved, or whatever. OP being there probably makes no difference at all. Yeah, I get it's a messy situation, and I kinda do feel bad for OP's sister. But overall, I don't blame OP at all for just getting on the flight, and not choosing to waste a ticket that might not be able to be refunded. Let's face it, whatever happened with this, the outcome would have been the same whether or not OP stayed with them. Cybertruck boomer uses disabled spot without a placard and I had him towed. I, 19 female, have POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It's a disability that causes my heart rate to spike when I stand up. This causes symptoms such as dizziness, nausea, and chest pain. Some people pass out from POTS, I don't. When it's very hot or very cold, my POTS symptoms get worse. I live in Florida where it's hot all the time. Because of this, my cardiologist filled out a form allowing me to get a disabled parking permit, and the DMV gave me a license plate with a disabled symbol which shows that I'm allowed to park in disabled spots. I work at a science museum, and last week as I was pulling into the parking lot I was cut off by a Cybertruck. By the way, this is a Cybertruck if you haven't seen one. The Cybertruck sped into the last disabled parking spot. This was the last parking spot in our lot, making me have to park across the street. It was about 90 degrees that day. I walked across the street passing the Cybertruck as I made my way to the entrance to the museum. To my shock, I saw that the Cybertruck didn't have a disabled wheelchair icon on the license plate, nor the placard in the window. Not only was this dipshit a rude driver, but they had also taken the last disabled parking spot when I, an actual disabled person, really needed it. I was at this point livid, and feeling like I was going to puke from my heart rate spiking from the walk to the museum. I went inside and told my manager, who was appalled and tried to find the person before calling the cops, as in the state of Florida it's a towable offense that also results in a fine of $250, as displayed on every disabled parking sign in the state. He wasn't in the museum. We checked the cameras and it turns out he went to a restaurant across the street. He was using our parking lot to avoid paying for parking. My manager called the police and a towing company. 2 police cars showed up and the cops said that they'd give him a ticket, and that since he's nowhere to be found, they'd call a tow truck at his expense and impound the vehicle until he pays. For Florida cops, they were actually shockingly nice and helpful. The tow truck arrived and tried to tow the Cybertruck, but as they attempted to pull out, the Cybertruck's back panel flew off. They had to reattach the Cybertruck to the tow and eventually were able to drive off with it. A few minutes later, a man in his 50s appeared, yelling about how his Cybertruck was gone. The police explained that they had to have him towed since he was parking in a disabled parking spot. The man continued to carry on for like another 10 minutes before the cops threatened to arrest him and he finally shut up. They wrote him a ticket and the cops left. The man stayed yelling at my manager without end until a Tesla finally showed up to pick him up. Karma's a bitch. She erased us from her wedding, so I'm erasing her from mine. When my brother got married, his bride, now my sister-in-law, had very specific expectations. She wanted everyone in the wedding to wear their wedding colors, and we all did. People flew in from out of state. Everyone made an effort to make her feel celebrated. The day before the wedding, she made some offhanded but clearly pointed remarks about how our side of the family never takes anything seriously and she wasn't expecting us to take this seriously either. The comments made their rounds and feelings were hurt before the wedding even began. But we still showed up, looked great, and participated. Fast forward to getting the wedding photos and video. Not a single photo of our side of the family was posted. Not one. In the entire 3-minute highlight reel, no faces from our family, except a 3-second clip of my parents with the bride and groom. The rest of us, it's like we never existed. I texted her cordially and asked if she could send me the pictures with just our siblings, since none had been posted. She responded that we never took those pictures. That's wild because I remember helping people adjust corsages for them. She doubled down on the gaslighting. I gave it 6 months and asked again. She suddenly had no idea what I was talking about. Fine, here's where the petty revenge comes in. I'm getting married in 8 days. I've been engaged for 6 months and planning this moment since she tried to erase us. I hired a great photographer and videographer. What she doesn't know is that the videographer has a secret mission. Make it look like she's getting all the attention. Track her. Hover near her like she's the star of the show. She will feel so seen. And then, the final cut, she won't appear for even 1 second, just like she made sure we didn't. I didn't even invite her originally. Word must have gotten out because she cornered me at a family dinner and said, "Unfortunately, I have to work the day before and after your wedding, but I should still be able to make it." I was so stunned, I just said, "That's fine. The Airbnb is booked whether you're there or not." So now she's coming. Ugh. To cope, I spelled her name wrong on the wedding invite on purpose. That was my first move. The video blackout will be my last. Not asking for advice. Not asking if it's too mean. It's not. It's exactly fair. Happy to finally talk about it freely. Anyway, friends, that's going to be all for today. Thank you for watching. As always, I do appreciate it. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already for more Reddit content like this, and drop a comment down below. So take care, stay tuned for more, and I'll see you next time.